But we aren't turning away from the possibility of a special session just yet. Correspondent Gwyneth Dolan hosts a roundtable discussion this week with UNM political science professor Timothy Krebs and Daniel Williams, policing policy advocate with the ACLU of New Mexico. They'll dive into the real and perceived problems the governor says that she wants to address in a special session, the potential pitfalls of these proposals, and the politics of public safety in our state. Here's Gwyneth.
Thanks, Lou. Let's first set the stage here. National poll numbers show people across the country think crime is worse than it is. But there is no question crime in New Mexico is higher than it is in other places. The governor just said retail theft is out of control. It's complicated, though. The latest Albuquerque statistics show that property crimes are actually down a little bit over the past 6 years. But the number of assaults and murders is about the same. Here's the one big thing that has changed. Drug offenses have doubled, right? APD calls these crimes against society, and I think that is a useful way of thinking about it right now. At the same time, the number of homeless people has risen in almost every state across the country. But New Mexico had the biggest increase, and that's a 50% increase in the number of homeless people on the street over the past decade. So the first question is, what are the actual problems we need to solve here? Tim, let me go to you first.
Well, you know, these issues are really complex, and you know, you can say, well, we'll take a stab at the crime problem, or take a stab at the housing problem, the homelessness problem, the drug addiction problem, mental health, et cetera. But really, these things are together. They're correlated with each other, and so, you know, it's a big, complex problem. Crime is associated with poverty. Poverty is a predictor of homelessness, and so, you know, and other kinds of societal ills. And so these problems are really sort of interconnected.
We can't really pull one out without.
Exactly, that's exactly right. I mean, and certainly when we talk about crime, for example, the perception of crime is always higher than the actual crime numbers. It just always is. And while it's clear that New Mexico, that the crime problem, the crime rates nationally and also in New Mexico have come down, certainly nationally, substantially in the last couple of years. People's perception of it is that it's really, really out of control. And New Mexico is above the national average on all these different crime indicators, but it has come down a bit.
Daniel, do you agree?
I do. I think it's a really important point to look at all of these as a holistic issue, that we can't just tackle one thing at a time and expect things to get better. And I think it's also important for us to recognize that we can't take the same approach that has failed us over and over again, fueling mass incarceration and harming our communities. We can't arrest our way out of any of the problems that you just named. We have to be looking at what are the root causes, what are driving these issues in our communities. And it's not going to work to just arrest everyone and throw them in jail. That's just going to make the problem worse, as we've seen for my whole life and really longer.
And I think the governor, in the interview we just saw, echoed some of that. And she said root causes. She said that's what she wants to do. She wants to call lawmakers back to Santa Fe this summer, after the primary, notably, to pass more laws related to crime and public safety. She says we need to, and she didn't say we can't arrest our way out, but she did say she wanted to look at the root causes of crime and invest in communities. She did say tough on crime strategies haven't worked. That's pretty common Democratic, perspective. But Tim, let's talk about what's on the street here. You work at UNM. Mm-hmm. You know what it's like on Central right now, right? I was stopped at a light the other day, and I saw a guy leaning against the light pole to steady himself while he shot up. What kind of pressure do these visuals, these situations, what kind of pressure does this put on politicians?
This is, I mean, politicians are reacting to what they're hearing from their constituents. And it's these kinds of experiences that constituents are relaying to them. It's not exactly, there's research that shows that, it's not necessarily the sort of, the rhetoric that politicians use in elections that's causing people to think that crime is worse than it is. It's actually the public itself has been leading, the public opinion on crime has been leading politicians to take harder and harder stances with respect to criminal justice and crime fighting issues. But this
That's
is
interesting
but
to hear
this
you put
is,
it that way, because I might have suspected the opposite.
Yeah,
But it's
right.
the public pushing politicians to do
There's
this. Yeah.
research that shows that as opposed to the other way around since the 1950s. And so these kinds of visuals are the things that the public is reacting to. They see this and they're rightfully sort of outraged, I think. It's an emotional kind of experience that you have when you see that.
Yeah.
And they then will contact their legislators or write letters to the editor or whatever, or respond to pollsters that crime's out of control.
Yeah, and I was having some of these same thoughts when I was watching her do her State of the State address in January at the opening of the session. I thought, oh, there's so much about crime in this speech. And I know she feels like she has to talk about this, but what is she going to say, right? And let's do a little, flashback. During that State of the State address, she laid out her public safety agenda. It was a sizable part of the speech. She wanted 10 things: an assault weapon ban, raising the gun buying age to 21, a 14-day waiting period before buying a gun, increased penalties for felons in possession of a firearm, a ban on guns in parks and playgrounds, allowing cops to file red flag orders, enhanced penalties for commercial burglary, pretrial detention for violent and repeat offenders, mandatory treatment, we're going to come back to this, for people repeatedly entering the judicial system, and restrictions on panhandling. As we all saw, she did not get that list accomplished, but she got a ban on firearms at polling places, wasn't actually on her list. A 7-day waiting period, not 14. Keeping suspects locked up if they reoffend while they're out awaiting trial on a first charge. And increased penalties for second-degree murder and attempted second-degree murder. And now she wants more. She says this is an emergency. The public wants something done. Worth noting, also an election year for state lawmakers. Just putting that out there. So is this a real emergency, or is this a political emergency, or both?
Well, I think I also live in Albuquerque. I'm seeing the same things that we've already talked about, that everyone is seeing. And so I think there are real issues, and we all want to live in a safe community. I don't think that the emergency rhetoric that the governor is using is especially helpful for thinking about these issues. These are long-term systemic issues. We didn't get here overnight. This wasn't something that we started having substance use issues in this country last year. We started having homelessness in this state 2 years ago.
Although, to be fair, those numbers are both up a lot recently.
They're up. There's a long story of how we got to that place where those numbers are increasing to the extent that they are. And so this idea that all of a sudden we just need to come to Santa Fe for 3 days or maybe a week and we can pass a bunch of legislation and we're just going to fix it all, it's really not the way these issues work. And some of the things that she's talking about are really complex, thorny legal issues that take a lot of care and attention to solve.
Now, again, she said she wants to call this, if she does, after the primary, and everyone's kind of too busy to come to Santa Fe while they're out campaigning and doing their real jobs. But what are the dynamics for state lawmakers who are probably thinking ahead to the mailers they want to put out, the mailers other people are going to put out against them, the TV ads, that kind of stuff? What's at stake for them?
Well, certainly for incumbents who are in districts that are competitive. The crime issue is one that they could be potentially vulnerable on if they haven't done the things that people think they should do with respect to sort of being tough on crime, addressing the issue. Because it is a very serious concern in the state. New Mexico is always like number one or number two in terms of being a very violent place. And so there's no ignoring that, and I think people are rightfully sort of frustrated with sort of how the criminal justice system works and how policing and crime fighting works, and sort of the lack of response in some way from elected officials. There's always a fine line, of course, between sort of being tough on crime and sort of the lock everyone up approach certainly has not worked. I mean, that is absolutely clear.
I want to segue here to panhandling, because in terms of something that could change the optics of crime quickly, it could be restricting panhandling. She painted in that interview a pretty scary picture of people with machetes and 2x4s. Okay, I haven't seen that, but I get it. It, as a lady in my car alone a lot, there are some times when I've been a little bit freaked out. But Daniel, I know you're going to tell me that civil libertarians don't like this.
Well, civil libertarians don't like this. I think also as a person of conscience, I don't like this. I think it's important to know, the governor did talk about people chasing people with machetes. It's important to note that that's already illegal.
Okay, well, fair enough.
And that a panhandling ban is not narrowly tailored to address those issues. And so the governor mentioned that there have been First Amendment challenges to panhandling ordinances in the past. She believes that the proposal that she is putting forward might pass constitutional muster. It's probably not going to surprise you that the people that I'm talking to don't share that assessment. But regardless of the sort of legal First Amendment constitutional issues, there's also a sort of a fundamental values question here for me and for us at the ACLU, which is that I think we can all agree that homelessness is one of the moral crises of our times, and that it's unacceptable that we live in a country where so many people don't have the resources that they need to shelter themselves. And so the idea that criminalizing people for activity that they are undertaking to just give themselves the resources they need to survive, that is going to solve that problem, it's just wrong-headed. We know that incarceration, one period of incarceration makes someone 7 times more likely to experience homelessness. Multiple incarcerations make someone more than 13 times more likely to experience homelessness. So the idea of criminalizing this behavior, criminalizing people for asking for money on the street, that's just going to make the problem worse, and it's not going to really help us address this problem that is something that weighs on, I think, all of our consciences.
You make an eloquent case, Daniel. I want to move on to criminal competency and civil commitment. The governor gave an example of someone who is homeless, has mental health issues, violent tendencies. They're making the pain go away with fentanyl. Now they're stealing stuff to get by and get food and buy drugs. And now they're charged with, say, aggravated assault or shoplifting, but they're too messed up to stand trial. So what she wants is, if a judge finds they're incompetent to stand trial because they have mental health or behavioral health issues that are preventing that, then a judge can send them to treatment. She says forcing them to go to treatment would allow them to get that addiction dealt with and address the underlying mental health issues in order to stand trial. That's one thing. Another bill would allow, say, a family with an adult child who's got a drug problem and is totally out of control to petition the court to send them to treatment, even if they don't really want to go. Now, they'd have to, there's some due process, and we'll get back to that. But Tim, what do you think of this idea? It's pretty in the weeds. This isn't something I think a lot of people think about, but would this work? Is this a good idea to use these two methods to get more people into treatment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it strikes me as a kind of middle ground between doing nothing at all and throwing everybody in jail. right? And so you take people and people. This is part of the frustration that people have with respect to the criminal justice system, and that being able to hold people who have been accused of committing criminal acts and so forth. Having them back out on the streets and doing more, being engaged in more criminal activity. I mean, that's a big part of people's frustration, I think, with respect to the status quo on criminal justice. So it strikes me as a bit more of a middle ground, but there are clear constitutional issues there, just as there are in panhandling regulations.
Give me a 30-second reaction to that idea. Distill it.
This is so complicated and big, and it really needs more than 30 seconds now and more than 3 days this summer. We need a long...
She says she's working with lawmakers in these working groups, and this did come a little bit through last session.
It did. I was in every single committee where these bills were heard, and I would not have characterized these bills as having momentum this last session. So I would not share the governor's assessment there. We need to have public defenders, people who, like us, who care about the Constitution and civil liberties, people who represent marginalized communities. They all need to be at the table, and they all are at the table working to do something that could be really transformative.
But maybe too fast for your...
Maybe too fast. We need
All
to
right.
really get this right.
Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the governor says there aren't enough cops on the street. Probably a lot of people would agree. Maybe it doesn't feel like there's enough cops on the street with the number of people we see on, out there. To be clear, there is no empirical evidence that more cops equals less crime. Do we need more cops? I know you're going to say no, but tell me why.
We don't need more cops, and we don't need more criminalization. And so what we need to be really looking at is directing our resources to solving the problems. And when there are cases that don't need a police response, we need to be doing things like what Albuquerque is doing and what Las Cruces is doing with non-police responses, Albuquerque Community Safety and Project Light.
Non-police response. What do you think?
I think we need to do more with respect to non-police response, and I think what Albuquerque has done and other communities have done is a really a positive step. But I would disagree that I think more cops is a good thing in terms of crime fighting. I think there's clear evidence that shows that there, where you have additional police, you're going to have lower crime rates, you're going to have lower property crime rates, especially in violent crime rates. But there's a balance there too. How do you direct those resources? And targeting those resources to the habitual offenders and the small group of people that are actually engaged in crime, as opposed to targeting those resources to panhandlers per se. They're not the ones really committing crime. What they create is a kind of public safety issue that I think is really important and needs to be addressed for not only for motorists and cyclists and what have you, but also for them. I mean, for the people who are doing the panhandling. But in any case, the bigger issues are on sort of habitual criminals, the small number of people that are engaged in a disproportionate number of crimes. And additional police resources can help with that.
And I think what we saw her saying was kind of what you just said, but also panhandling. She was like, we need to get rid of these things that are caused by drugs and mental health so that we can deal with the bigger issues. But then she also wants to get rid of this optics problem a little bit.
Yes, because it's a symbol. It's an optics issue. It's something that people and elected officials can point to as, the public and elected officials can point to that and say this is part and parcel of the broader crime and disorder sort of issue in communities.
That is all we have time for this conversation, but thank you so much. You both gave me a lot to think about. Tim, Daniel, we really appreciate having you with us, and we will be watching as this special session gets fired up. Maybe not. Thank you.